When a headless body was found in a fish tank, people would have more questions than answers. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you love all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange happenings of the world, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Let's get started. In late July of 2018, multiple neighbors of Brian Egg would make phone calls to the police concerned about his whereabouts. So police officers would perform wellness checks where they'd go to the house, knock on the door, and wait for the owner to answer. Except nobody answered. Brian Egg seemingly vanished, and they never went into his home. And then on August 7th, Brian Egg's sister would file a missing persons report. So police went back to Brian Egg's home in San Francisco. So again, they knocked on the door, and when no one answered and they kind of looked around the outside, they deemed it not suspicious and left the house. And still, the officers didn't go inside. And then on August 14th, police would hear from concerned neighbors yet again. This time, their claim was even more terrifying. The neighbors would report suspicious people at Brian Egg's home, but they would also report seeing a crime scene cleaning truck at the home of Brian Egg. And of course, this is sending off red flags to every single neighbor. Why would a crime scene cleaning truck be at his home? Nobody even knows where Brian Egg is at this point. When police arrived, they would arrest two people, 52-year-old Robert McCaffrey and 39-year-old Lance Silva. So obviously this is very suspicious, so police can now enter the home. And when they went in, they didn't find Brian Egg and they didn't find any evidence of a crime. What they did find is cleaning products and obviously a very suspicious odor. So the very next day, the San Francisco Police Department Homicide Unit took over the case. They obtained a warrant and began to search Brian Egg's home. And during that search, the Homicide Unit would make a gruesome discovery. Investigators would find parts of a body inside a fish tank in a concealed area of the home. Those remains were in an advanced stage of decomposition. Court documents would later reveal that Brian's credit cards had been stolen, and one of those credit cards was actually used to buy a BMW, and those two suspects were actually released. The police department didn't have enough evidence on the two, so of course they went to this car dealership and they took a picture of Brian Egg and they said, "Hey, is this the man that bought this car?" And he said, "No, I don't think so." But they showed him a picture of Lance Silva, and that was the man that had apparently purchased the car from him using Brian Egg's credit card. Silva would admit to police that that is his BMW, he did drive it, but he refused to admit that he had made that purchase on Brian Egg's credit card, that it was a fraudulent purchase. Silva also admitted that they hired that crime scene cleanup crew to come clean the home. And knowing all of this information, the suspects still have not been charged. One of Brian's neighbors would go on to say that the murderer is free and roaming the streets and can claim his next victim. "I want a more thorough investigation. I want someone arrested." Another would say a couple of guys were found in Brian Egg's house after hiring a cleaning crew and using his credit cards. After a couple of checks on the house, they found his mutilated body in a fish tank. And yet, now there is apparently no suspect in his death. And his family finds out through the media that one suspect has been released. This is awful. When Lance was released from jail, that same neighbor would go on to say, "He was frantically cleaning up that place. I just saw a river of sudsy water pouring out of the front door of Brian's house, and that was very bizarre. I saw Lance come out and sweep the water down into the storm drain." Brian Egg was 65 at the time, and he was a former bartender. He was last seen in his home around May 2018. And neighbors would actually call the cops for a few reasons. They loved Brian Egg. He would walk his dog around the neighborhood, and he also cared for the neighborhood's plants. He was often times watering them and just weeding and taking care of everybody's plants. They just really loved him. So when they saw this suspicious activity and people kind of coming and going around his house, they knew that something was wrong. The autopsy would later reveal that the cause of death was blunt force trauma. The body was submerged in chemicals. Obviously, they had to cut the body up, and apparently Brian's head and hands are still missing. The medical examiner wrote, "The subject's legs also appeared severed, but the feet were found in the fish tank inside socks. As the subject was being manipulated and pulled out of the tank, apparent biological tissue was dislodged from the bones." Obviously, police would face a lot of criticism because they failed to act quickly, and they would go on to say that we can't just kick people's doors in, we need probable cause to go in there. But many feel that the fact that so much was happening at this house and continually reported that they had probable cause. So of course, nobody has officially been charged and the case remains open at this point. But that's it for today, guys. If you like this video or any other video on my channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss video upload. If you have a suggestion for a case, as always, pop in the comments and I'll get to as many of them as possible. Check out the other videos on my channel while you wait, and I'll see you next time.